No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. Before we get to this segment of America's Third Watch, I want to discuss what we all must do to tamp down the fake news that has exploded onto the social media scene. It's cancerous to the point that the elitist mainstream media has fallen prey, quoting and using social media posts as if they were facts triple-sourced by actual journalists. The fact of the matter is this. In the information age, when most people have smartphones with internet access, there is absolutely no excuse for not checking, at least in a cursory manner, to see if what you're posting, forwarding, reposting, or retweeting isn't fact-based. It takes less than 10 seconds to highlight a subject and put it into a web browser to see what comes up. Case in point, and I have to admit, some people I hold in high esteem have fallen prey to this. There's a popular sentiment being reposted across most social media platforms in the aftermath of the Trump assassination attempt that reads, quote, "I think this goes without saying, but the chief of the Secret Service shouldn't come from the company who sells Pepsi and Cheetos," unquote. In less than 15 seconds, I discovered that this post is disingenuous at best and deceptive at worst. Kimberly Cheatle is the director of the U.S. Secret Service. But to read the social media post, you would think that Biden appointed her because of her connection to the woke PepsiCo company. That's not the case. Not by a long shot. Cheatle joined the U.S. Secret Service in 1995 and was involved in the evacuation of Vice President Dick Cheney during the September 11th attacks. She served on Joe Biden's protective detail during the Obama administration. In 2017 and 2018, she served as Deputy Assistant Director of the organization. She also served as the special agent in charge of the Grand Rapids, Michigan office. Cheatle became the first woman to serve as Assistant Director of Protective Operations, a department tasked with the protection of the president and dignitaries, and managed a budget of over $133.5 million. Now, it's true that Cheatle parlayed her career with the U.S. Secret Service into a plum private sector job, like all those from inside the Beltway do after their tenure in government, if, in fact, they actually retire before they mold. From 2019 to 2022, Cheatle served as Senior Director of Global Security at PepsiCo, where she directed and implemented security protocols for the company's facilities in North America. Then, in August of 2022, Biden announced Cheatle's appointment as the Director of the United States Secret Service, ending her private sector career. She assumed the station on September 17, 2022. Now, does that sound like all she did to warrant the Secret Service directorship was sell Pepsi and Cheetos? No, it doesn't. To infer that someone with the experience that Cheatle has amassed during her career wasn't qualified for her current position is disingenuous and smacks of political motive. Yet, I doubt most of the people who shared and reposted the aforementioned comment bothered to take the time to determine whether the inference wasn't unfair. Was the information fact-based, or was it politically motivated? Now, don't get me wrong. When a former president and current presidential candidate is involved in an assassination attempt, you can't deny the systemic failure of the protection detail. And given that protection details at that level are supposed to be the elite of the Secret Service, the culpability and blame for the failure land at the director's feet. So I do believe it would be the honorable thing for Cheatle to tender her resignation, and, failing to do so, she should be removed from the position. But the larger point here is this. When people who identify as conservative, constitutionalist, Republican, etc., unwittingly become dupe propagandists because they don't take the time to divine truth from lie, fact from fiction, we give the Marxist left all the ammunition they need to label us liars, dolts, and propagandists in the public square, providing them cover for their own propagandistic malfeasance. And there is no reason whatsoever we should act that stupidly. Bottom line, if you have the time to scroll through social media, if you have the time to consider reposting something you found on social media or even heard in passing, you have 15 seconds to figure out if it's even remotely true before you do. If you can't do that in defense of the truth, then you aren't part of any solution. You are a huge part of the problem. For the love of baby Jesus, be your own fact checkers, people. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station WGUL, AM 860 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida. Fact check, people.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Who helped cause soaring gas prices? BlackRock. Who contributed to outrageous housing prices? BlackRock. BlackRock and Larry Fink spent years harassing oil and gas companies, making them divest from fossil fuels. Now you feel the pain. And BlackRock-owned companies are snatching up houses, crippling families. Now BlackRock's former ESG czar, Brian Deese, is Biden's economic advisor, crushing America from within. That's what BlackRock is really about.
Bank of America wants to control how you live your life. They're building a system to track your carbon emissions and monitor your driving, coming after your Second Amendment rights, favoring certain home buyers based on their race. Bank of America is using a social score system straight out of China's playbook. Bank of America is obsessed with trying to control your life. What will they do next? Bank of America. Their lies start with their name.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Well, I've been waiting to talk to you ever since this happened on Saturday. I knew that I wanted to get your perspective on this. I know everybody out there has also been waiting for that. So, my goodness, Frank, what's your take on this whole thing?
Well, first off, my condolences to the family of the volunteer fire chief that was killed on this day, protecting, on Saturday, protecting his wife. He's a brilliant firefighter. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He was protecting his wife and his daughter, shielding them from the gunshots that he was hearing. Immediate reaction. That's a hell of a loss for a community, someone who gives like that. So to those who were injured, and especially to his family, my condolences. Glad Trump's okay. I'm glad he was strong enough at his age to be able to stand up and be resolute in the face of evil. That is a commentary on how fit he is to be cognizant afterwards to address the crowd and get out of here. Far be it from the Secret Service's wishes at that moment to get him off stage. He had to tell them, wait a minute. Yeah. But this is the byproduct of not only what you said in the open, the rhetoric, the accelerated rhetoric that comes out of the left to demonize somebody to the point of being an inanimate object, but this is a commentary on our media today that echoes that at volume 11. You've got people like Joy Reid. You've got people like Rachel Maddow. You've got the entirety of the Morning Joe contingent. You've got the entirety of the MSNBC, and CNN punditry that has been nothing but caustic towards this man and thumping it into their viewers' brains that this guy is evil. What do they expect?
That's right.
The irresponsibility of the mainstream media complex today, and every single channel, Every single publication that is politically agendized, and that's 99% of them, they have to be culpable to some point in what happened on Saturday. If they weren't thumping this message, like Goebbels to the German people about the Jews, if they weren't thumping this hate message, we wouldn't have seen Saturday. But when you use brainwashing psychology to turn someone's opinion the way that you want them to think, things like this happen. Because not everybody is the strongest link in the chain. This 20-year-old dead kid now was evidently not the strongest link in the intellectual chain out there. Mm-hmm. So there's a level of responsibility that the media has not to do exactly what it has been doing for the last 7.5 years. And if the board of directors of the corporations that own each and every one of these news agencies that just allow these propagandists to vomit the hate that they vomit daily, don't start taking votes to oust the editorial directors and the program directors and the people who allow this stuff on the air, then they've got blood on their hands too. But it's time. Mm-hmm. It's time for a reckoning for the people who shop hate all the time, because it's killing people.
Indeed. And as you mentioned, Frank, about the former fire chief who was killed, my heart just was breaking about that. As I was mentioning earlier on the program, I mean, I guess if one perspective is he died in Donald Trump's place. An American citizen was killed because they went to a political rally. And it's all the genesis of all this is that rhetoric and the dehumanization of one group by another. It's just we can't go on like this.
In a much broader context, we saw what happened Saturday because our education system is a complete and utter failure. We don't educate children on critical thinking skills so they think things through all the way to a conclusion. Would a 20-year-old throw his life away because he wanted to follow some propagandist brainwashing agenda? If they had critical thinking skills to a level that we used to have in this country, I doubt it.
There was a lot of good words from President Biden, but it didn't seem to light on the right thing, and that is the personal demonization of Donald Trump as Beelzebub, basically.
Well, we can't, on one hand, castigate the guy for his obvious cognitive decline, and on the other, expect him to be fully there when he's making a statement about something like this, even though he's reading off teleprompter. Right. So we have to point the finger at the puppet master. Why wasn't it loaded into the teleprompter with the proper words on it to de-escalate this? And the handlers of Obama 2.0, the people who are running him, and Anita Dunn is one of them, and she's a self-avowed Marxist from the Obama administration. The end justifies the means, no matter what it is. We've talked about this ad nauseum. When you see Marxist revolutions in history, it comes with a high degree of violence. In China, in Russia, when you're having a soft Marxist revolution like we're having in the United States, you have to expect that kind of tolerance at the hand of the perpetrator is going to be there intellectually. Well, it's going to happen. And I can hear them saying this. This goes along with the mentality of, ramp it up until you create that transformative chaos. And in this instance, that includes violence. They were fine with it in 2020 during the summer of the George Floyd riots. They were fine with it in Washington, D.C., when they even burnt a church down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to expect that it only goes further. The only way to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again is to flush the toilet, because that's what it is. These people who are held over from the Obama administration who use hate as a political tool have to be purged from public service.
Mm-hmm.
And that can't happen if the deep state is protecting them. If the bureaucracy is protecting them. Trump, he moved to make it easier to fire people who were in middle management in the federal bureaucracy because we're supposed to be a meritocracy. And immediately when Biden gets in, he rescinded that so that you literally have to murder somebody in order to get fired as a federal employee.
Yeah.
Oh, what message does that send?
Indeed. Well, Frank, what do you? I mean, I think the country is different as a result of what happened Saturday evening in Pennsylvania. It has to be. There's some change that's happening here, but what kind of country do you think we'd be living in if unfortunately, if the assassin had hit his mark in that sense? I mean, I can't imagine what we'd be going through right now and what this Monday morning would look like in that realm of darkness, as it were.
To the extent that I'm even going to address that question, it would be a very different country.
Yeah.
I believe doing hypotheticals on that right now feeds into what the left wants us to do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about let's see them expose themselves for the haters that they are. In the aftermath of sending a bullet towards their candidate's head.
Yeah. Well, what I mean to say is that things could boil over, and this is, to some degree, I think that's what the left actually wants to a great degree. It feels like they want to force this issue to happen.
They like to force a lot of things. Doesn't mean we have to play their game.
Agreed. No, absolutely. But, a lot of people are talking about divine intervention. When it comes to being this close, it seems like that's making a lot of sense at this point.
Well, we were a quarter inch and a half a head turn away from having a very different country, but we aren't there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's best to deconstruct what happened or didn't happen right now, and that's a point that everybody's got to understand. Do not just retweet or repost things that you're seeing on social media. Do some freaking homework before you propagate things that aren't true. There's a popular sentiment going around now that says Secret Service chief is wholly unqualified. She sold Pepsi and Cheetos before. That was after being in the Secret Service on the presidential detail since 1995. She retired and she got a plum job with PepsiCo and then came back to be appointed. I'm not a fan of this Secret Service chief. I think there's a failure there that should see her with the buck stopping with her. Yeah, she should say, you know what? Under my leadership, we had a failure. We had a massive failure. How does a rooftop not be completely canvassed around an area that's going to have somebody with Secret Service protection on it? That's a failure. I'm not going to speculate on some of the things I'm seeing about whether or not there was a sniper had this person in the site and couldn't get the kill shot order. That will come out in testimony under a Republican leadership in the House. Thank God we've got Republican leadership in the House for that to be able to happen. But right now, even the simplest of research must be done on our behalf so that we don't fall prey to the goading of the left to respond the way they would respond. It takes 3 seconds. Just do a Google search on the woman's name. You would have found out, oh, she was a Secret Service agent from 1995 on through 2008. I guess the people saying that she was never a Secret Service agent are wrong. I won't retweet that.
Right. No, exactly. But of course, conspiracy theories always abound in events like this. And certainly the fact that there was this exposed roof, to me, it's just too fantastical. It's 130 yards away, approximately. It's a roof with a line of sight. I can imagine something that doesn't have a line of sight. That's that they would say, okay, this isn't something we have to be concerned with. But it seems like just by looking out from the arena that was constructed there, the area, that you would say, hey, that's a great place to, if you wanted to fire a gun. I mean, it seems like basic common sense.
Logic mandates this. If there were people with boots on the ground at this function taking pictures of somebody beating down on the president with a rifle, that the snipers that are always around when Secret Service is protecting a presidential candidate would have seen them. Do I have the answer to that? No, I don't. Therefore, I'm not going to speculate. Beyond it saying there is a failure there, there is a dramatic failure there because there are pictures and they're not deep fakes, people. They're not, if Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow happen to be listening, grow up. They're not deep fakes. Jean-Pierre, Corinne Jean-Pierre.
Yeah.
The questions have to be answered about this, and actions need to be taken to rectify it, whether it's for Joe Biden or whether it's for Donald Trump. One thing's clear out of this: the continued refusal to afford Robert F. Kennedy Secret Service protection now must end. That political end must end, because some idiot is going to want to become the third person in the Kennedy trifecta. And whether you agree with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or not, that family suffered enough. 2 assassinations, 1 president, one presidential candidate. We're going to go for a third? Enough of the political showboating, Mr. Biden. Just do it.
Oh, agreed completely. So, I expect it's an iPhone, and that's just an assumption I'm making. I don't know if they've actually said whether or not, but they are having a terrible time, evidently trying to crack this phone to see, who this person may have been talking to and glean whatever information they can from it.
Give it to somebody from Anonymous. They'll get it open in about 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah, it does. It's unbelievable to me that it's undoable.
It's only undoable if you're not willing to do everything you need to do to open it. Now, are we talking about some privacy issues here that has to do with people who wouldn't be murderous thugs? Yeah, we're talking about that. Mm-hmm. But in the aftermath of a deadly shooting, and one that took out the life of the shooter, there should be protocols in place from Apple, from Android, from Motorola, from every phone maker to say, you know what, if it's evidence in a murder trial, we've got to look, we've got to cooperate. To dig in your heels right now, boy, that would really be a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And again, this person was 20 years old. It's so hard to believe that they would have, tried to do this. Obviously, we don't know what was in their head. We don't know what was in their heart. The forensic, piecing together is the best we can do to try to get some idea, at all.
Yeah, I get the flavor of what the answer to that is going to be, and it's going to be a 20-year-old who was hopeless. And this goes back to exactly what we were talking about before. When you thump the message of hate and hopelessness, of despair, 24/7, 365. We've got Hitler coming back. The country is going to devolve into nothing. Your freedom's going to be gone. And you're dealing with a demographic that has a stunted intellect where critical thinking skills is involved. Again, what do you expect? When you can't reason things to the end of the thought and divine BS, politically motivated BS, agendized BS from the facts, then you're going to have people move to do something like this. This is why the mainstream media, the education system, the political class that uses this kind of rhetoric or doesn't teach how to see this kind of intellectual garbage, this is where the fault must lie. You see a lot of things about it. We have to unite. We have to come together. We can't allow this thing to happen again, ever, ever, ever. Well, really? Okay, I agree with you. But let's make the change that needs to be changed. And that means taking, and I'm going to use Chicago as an example, taking the Chicago Teachers Union and say, you're not going to hold politics hostage for money anymore. You've got to start showing some results when it comes to testing for your students. When you're graduating people from school at benchmarks of 8th grade and senior year in college and they can't read, you're failing. And you're not getting a raise. And we're not giving you more benefits. And I don't care if you march in the streets. Screw you. Teach the children. You want to be an educator? Educate. Don't indoctrinate. This is the change that we have to make for future generations if, in fact, we want to give them a country.
Yeah. Well said. Well, Frank, would you like to take a telephone call this morning?
Sure.
All right. Here we go. We've got Elizabeth giving us a call. Elizabeth in Lutz. Good morning, Elizabeth. Glad you could call back.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hey, it's good to talk to you. I'm so glad to listen to you today. Frank, you've just been awesome. And you too, Kyle. You're spot on with everything. So a couple things I just want to bring up really fast on this whole situation. I just was on my computer and I saw this Father Shera is the one that gave the benediction before the rally and before it started, before Trump went on. And he had already spoken with President Trump beforehand, shaking hands. And then he was going to leave. And on his way out, about 15, 20 people that he knew kind of stepped him aside. And he said, pray for our president because there are people there. And this is an actual interview with him that I just listened to. People want to kill him. People want to shoot him. You could see that on the National Catholic Register website. It's right there. And it was just like minutes later, he was out in the parking lot and he heard the shots. And people called him that were there at the rally from his parish and said, this is, he's been shot. That is all unbelievable. But then fast forward to, and I know you're a Catholic, Frank, as am I. And today is Saturday was a really special day, the Feast of Our Lady of the Mystical Rose, a brand newly approved apparition from Italy. July 5th is when Pope Francis approved this apparition. And you know how hard it is to get those approved. The last thing I want to say is there's a ripple effect that's going to be going on. And I already saw it tonight because I went to record my 10 p.m. news here on Fox 13. And it's a local station. And there was a game that was on. It was supposed to start at 8. They had to delay that game for an hour and a half because this is some kind of, I don't know, international game. It was in Miami. And people stampeded and broke down the fences and destroyed an elevator and everything, or an escalator, I think. And I'm just saying, people were angry, mobs just pushing their way through without tickets. People were arrested, but they had to let one of the fences down to let them through because it got so crazy. And I guarantee you, this is part of what we're going to see coming up, and it's going to continue because we've already seen it on these college campuses. But in Miami, for this to go on with normal people just going to a game, are you kidding me? Yeah. I was like, are we in Argentina or, Venezuela or someplace like that where that's, not uncommon? But here in the United States, yeah. But so I wanted your take on that.
Hey, well, thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate the call very, very much. Take care.
Being there. God bless you guys.
God bless. So what do you think, Frank?
Well, to the first point, it's a thought that a lot of people have had. With the rhetoric being ramped up the way it is, it was just a matter of time where we're hearing that all over the place. So the priest who gave the benediction was correct, but it was a general thought. I believe that in my heart. As far as the game, when you let 10 billion immigrants into a country and feature an international soccer match that you want to bring to the United States, a la the way they do it in Europe, you're going to get this because that's what they do in Europe. Okay, but it is a hell of a testimony about society. If I don't get what I want, we just push forward and take it. That's not what a civilized society does. Mm-hmm. You know, and we're at this point, we're on a road away from a civilized society. And maybe we have to take a step back, take a breath, and realize that we've got to start, we got to start serving our brothers and sisters out there. We can't just keep saying me, I, give. And you have to blame the people who lead society when you get to the point that we've gotten to. They're only out for themselves or their agenda, and that can't be.
Yeah, indeed.
If you like the podcast, please rate it and comment if your platform lets you. Go over to undergroundusa.com and subscribe to the Substack, and pick up your copy of Nullification, available on Amazon. But more importantly, talk to your friends, family, colleagues, and acquaintances about politics and religion. Do it calmly and employ facts over emotion. You'll be surprised how much you have in common with a great many of those you talk to. It's something we can all do to preserve the Republic. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're listening to Underground USA.
When someone is having a stroke, every minute counts. Just as putting out a fire quickly can stop it from spreading, treating a stroke quickly can reduce damage to the brain. The clock begins ticking as soon as you spot the signs of a stroke, because some treatments can only be used if the patient reaches the hospital in the first 3 hours after symptoms appear. So don't wait. Call 911 right away and get the person to a hospital immediately, even if the symptoms go away. If you think someone is having a stroke, remember the word FAST. F is for face. Ask the person to smile and check whether one side of their face is drooping. A is for arms. Have the person raise both arms and see if one arm drifts downwards. S is for speech. Ask the person to repeat a short phrase and notice if their words sound slurred. And finally, T is for time. If you spot any of these signs, call 911 right away to get the person to a hospital fast. Strokes are medical emergencies. The sooner a patient gets treatment, the better their chance of a good recovery.